The dawn of a new era begins.
Good evening and welcome to License to Parent the Early Years. It's a happy Tuesday today. I had a really good day and I'm feeling pretty refreshed and energetic. So we're going to have a good night tonight and we're going to talk about some pretty important topics. Tonight's show on the early years, we're going to talk about hiring a nighttime babysitter. Now, parents put a lot of work into hiring a child care provider. That's the person who cares for their children every day while they work. Oftentimes, however, they will hire a very young teenager for nights and weekends, not realizing that there could be a big downside to that. So we're going to talk about all of the things that you need to put in place for your nighttime and weekend babysitter so that they have the same exact advantages that your daytime babysitter does. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get started. See you in a few.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, listen, watch, chat. This is Webcast 1 Live. Programs on webcast1live.com are brought to you in part by KDC Builders, building custom homes for how you live. KDC will take your dreams and turn them into reality. Go to our website, kdcbuilt.com, or call Hannah Inman at 515-975-9990. And Tom Coates and ConsumerCreditOfAmerica.com. Are you overwhelmed with mounted credit card debt and feel there's no way out? Well, there is. Call 1-800-955-5765 for Consumer Credit of America. That's ccofamerica.com.
Welcome back. Tonight, we're going to talk about hiring a nighttime sitter. There are a lot of parents who like a date night. I love a date night. I don't often get one, but now I'm getting to the point where my older kids can watch my younger kids, which is fantastic because it means that every once in a while, my husband and I can go out for a romantic dinner and a movie. Now, most parents don't have 8 kids, and they don't have kids that are in college that can come home and babysit for mom and dad for free. And so most families look outside of their home for babysitters. And oftentimes their daytime sitter has had enough after about 10 hours and says, really don't want to do it on the nights and weekends. Occasionally is okay, but if you want it on a regular basis, you probably should hire someone else to do that. So what we're going to talk about is how to hire a great night and weekend sitter. And there are some things that you need to put into place before you even hire someone to watch your children in your home. First of all, you need to make sure that you have the right equipment for an emergency. If a babysitter is in your home and you don't have what they need to respond to an emergency, then you're handicapping them and your child could be hurt or killed as a result. So before you hire that sitter to come in, you need to put a safety plan into place for your house. And what that means is you need to have fire and tornado evacuation plans for each and every floor of your home, for how to get out and where to go once they get out. And you need to do drills with your children. So you need to teach your children where to go if there's a fire, where to go if there's a tornado, how to get out of the house from each and every floor, which means you may need to go purchase a ladder to hang from an upstairs window or steps to go up to an egress window downstairs. But you want to make sure that no matter what floor that your babysitter is on with the children, that they have an exit in case of a fire or in case of a problem. If you do not have egress windows in your basement, then I strongly recommend that you not allow your babysitter to be in the basement with the kids. Because if there is an emergency, they don't have a window to get out. Obviously, if there's a tornado, the basement is the safest place for them to go. But if you don't have an egress window, then you should not have your sitter babysitting in the basement of your home. If you do not have ladders to get out of the upstairs windows, you should not have your babysitter babysitting upstairs. You should only allow your sitter to watch your children on floors where there is access to an exit in case of a fire or an intruder or any other kind of problem that might come up. Okay? Also, you need to have a first aid kit. You need to have vinyl gloves. You need to have emergency numbers posted by each and every phone in your home. And you need to have an emergency medical authorization form that gives that babysitter or her parents or a neighbor the authority to authorize medical care for your child in the event you cannot be reached. Because if you're in a movie and you don't hear the phone ring and your child has fallen down the stairs, they cannot treat your child without consent from someone who is authorized. So, Friday, we're going to post some forms that you can use on our website, which is www.parentpermit.com. So go in on Friday, print down the forms, and make sure that you fill them out before you have a sitter start babysitting in your home. Okay, so now that you've gotten your home ready and you're ready to bring somebody in, the first thing you want to do is find a good candidate. And when you're looking for a good candidate, there's several things you want to do. First of all, you absolutely want to interview more than one person. You may have a neighbor whose daughter is very lovely and you might want to hire her, but I strongly encourage you to look at 3 or 4 different candidates. You can advertise, you can ask around church, ask around work, ask around your neighborhood, but make sure that you have some choices. Number one, because the candidate who's perfect is not always going to be available. And if they're really perfect, they're hardly ever going to be available. And number 2, you always want to look at a few different people because you might find someone that surprises you that you like a lot better than you thought you would. And that might be the perfect match for your family. So you want to make sure that you keep your options open. When interviewing a babysitter, you want to listen to what they're asking in addition to asking your own questions. If a young person expresses an interest in your children, if she asks how do they like their sandwiches cut, do they like the crust cut off, if she asks if there are any medications or any health issues that she needs to know about, if she gets down on the floor and plays with your child during the interview, all the while talking with you about the child, those are all very good signs because they show that that babysitter understands the importance of what she does. And they show that she is expressing an interest not only in the job, but actually in your child. And that's the best kind of candidate to hire, is someone who's going to bond with your child. Okay, now, accidental injuries are the number 1 cause of death over the age of 1 in small children. 5 children under the age of 5 die every day in the United States because of household accidents. So, there are things that you can do to make your life easier and to make it a little bit safer for your babysitter. First of all, teach the babysitter about your home. Show her where the panel is for the electricity in case she needs to throw a breaker. Show her where the emergency numbers are by the phone. Show her where the doors are, where the fire escape is if you have one. If the elevators aren't working and you live in an apartment, she needs to know where to find the stairs. Make sure that you show her anything that she could potentially need in case of a fire, a flood, a tornado, including where to find your first aid kit, where to find your 72-hour kit if she has to go to the basement, where to find a flashlight. If the power goes out, do you have a flashlight with batteries in it that your babysitter can reach, or candles with matches? All of these things that could possibly go wrong, you have to make sure that your sitter is prepared for by showing her where everything is in your home. Because in an emergency, your child might not remember. So it's important that you give her the information ahead of time. I highly recommend that you either find someone who already has first aid and CPR, or that you pay for the class. You can call your local fire department, West Des Moines, Urbandale, Des Moines. All of their fire departments offer first aid and CPR classes. They're about $35, and it certifies the babysitter in both first aid and CPR for adults, infants, and children. And so it makes her very prepared for any emergency that might come up. In addition, online, there is a website called Prepare Iowa that you can go to, where your babysitter can take classes in the education on child abuse and mandatory reporting, and also in universal precautions, which is also called bloodborne pathogens. Anytime your child gets hurt or your babysitter gets hurt, you want to make sure that they're using the proper precautions with gloves and with alcohol wipes, and making sure that any type of body fluid is disposed of properly, and that any type of injury is treated using the proper precautions, not just for your child's safety, but also for your sitter's safety. You want to make sure that there's protection on both sides. You want to make sure that you have Clorox Anywhere spray in case your child throws up or bleeds. You want to make sure that the sitter has the ability not only to clean up, but to kill any bacteria or germs that are there so that no one else gets exposed or gets sick. You want to make sure that you have shown her where the medicines are in case your child needs medication for anything. After she calls to verify that it's okay, then she knows where they're located rather than you trying to explain it over the phone. You will want to talk to your sitter about any medical needs that your child has, also any allergies that they have, also any educational disabilities that they have, any strange phobias that they have, any likes or dislikes that they have, all need to be covered. So if your child requires a special blanket and a special bear at bedtime, the sitter needs to know. And if your child has an EpiPen for nut allergies, not only does the sitter need to know, but the sitter needs to be shown multiple times so it's committed to memory how to use the EpiPen and when. And you need to have a health care plan, which we're also going to put on the website on Friday, filled out, ready for her to use. Okay? When hiring a babysitter for in your home at night and on weekends, depending on the age of your child, you're going to want to look at different ages of caregivers. If you have an infant, and I am talking a child under the age of 2, my recommendation is that you hire a sitter who is slightly older, that you not hire anyone under the age of 16, 17, because they need to have a driver's license. You absolutely want to make sure that in an emergency, that babysitter can get to help with your child. If you have a child who is older, who is in a booster seat, then it's okay sometimes to have a sitter who's a little bit younger, but I don't recommend one much younger than 15, no matter what the age of your child. Simply because in an emergency, there needs to be enough maturity there that the problem can be handled without both your child and your babysitter panicking. You definitely want to make sure that you have rules for your babysitter, and we're going to talk about those in just a little bit. But you also want to make sure that you sit down with your babysitter before she ever babysits and do a trial run in your home. And what this means is that you hire this sitter to come over for an afternoon, and you go outside and garden, you go next door to the neighbors to have coffee, you go just far enough away that you can either keep an eye on her with a baby monitor, check in frequently to see how things are going, keep an eye through the window so that your child can't see you, but you can keep an eye on how things are going to see what kind of interaction this babysitter has with your child. And the reason I say that is because oftentimes sitters will seem very interested in the position, but once hired, after a few moments, will then go back to status quo of plugging in the iPod, pulling out the Game Boy, getting on the internet. You kind of want to know how things are going. And so the first time you have a dry run, you want to be around so that you can see how the sitter manages things. Does your child like them? Do they respond to your child well? You want to make sure that there's a relationship building there before you leave the home to go away from home and allow this person to watch your children. Okay? Rules for babysitters. These are both simple and complicated. My very first rule for babysitters, they need to be dressed appropriately. And what this means is that you need to explain to your sitter that your child does not need to see their cleavage, does not need to see their crack, does not need to see the cheeks hanging out from under the shorts. Might seem crude, but it is appropriate. I tell anyone who watches my children that they need to wear pants or walking shorts, and that they need to wear a loose, comfortable shirt that covers their cleavage. This person is going to be bending over, squatting down, picking your child up, putting them down. Skin to skin contact is extremely unsanitary. It brings any germs that babysitter has been in contact with straight from her skin onto your child's. And so there needs to be coverage. Her skin needs to be covered. In addition, I don't believe that my 5-year-old needs to see anyone's belly button ring. So I think that a shirt that is long enough to cover so that when they bend over, there's nothing showing is appropriate. And it's okay to say to your sitter, there are certain things that I feel my children can see and can't. And one of the things that I want is I want a babysitter who is modest. However you choose to dress during the day, however you choose to dress when you go out on a date, that is certainly your right. But when you're coming into my home to watch my child, these are my expectations. It's okay to put those expectations in writing. It's okay to put a babysitter contract in writing that tells your expectations of everything and gives your sitter clear and explicit instructions. And then the two of you sign it together, and there's no misunderstandings about what your sitter was supposed to do in every event. Well, you can't cover every event, but as many of them as you can think of. It is also important that you think ahead to ways that you can cut down on the risk of accidents. The first thing that I recommend is simple meals. I know that a lot of parents will have a nighttime sitter over and they'll say, oh, just find something to scrounge together, fix whatever you like, ask him what he wants. It is a better idea to pre-make a casserole, pre-make a meal, give it to the sitter with the instructions of warm it in the microwave for 2 minutes, make sure it's not too hot, go ahead and serve it, pre-make snacks. Make sure that you have plenty of milk in the fridge and juice. And if you don't want your child drinking soda and you don't want them eating ice cream, you need to make that clear to the sitter. Because if it's in your house and your child tells her, my mom and dad let me have this all the time, she might just be gullible enough to believe them. So make sure you make it clear ahead of time what you do and don't allow your child to eat. We're going to be back in a few. When we come back, we're going to talk about more rules for babysitters. And we're going to talk about all of the things that you need to work on with your sitter to have the best relationship possible and the do's and don'ts. We'll be back in just a couple.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
Get away from my Sumito credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, listen, watch, chat. This is Webcast 1 Live. Programs on webcast1live.com are brought to you in part by KDC Builders, building custom homes for how you live. KDC will take your dreams and turn them into reality. Go to our website, kdcbuilt.com. or call Hannah Inman at 515-975-9990. And Tom Coates and ConsumerCreditOfAmerica.com. Are you overwhelmed with mounted credit card debt and feel there's no way out? Well, there is. Call 1-800-955-5765 for Consumer Credit of America. That's ccofamerica.com.
Welcome back. Okay, so now we are going to have someone join in on the conversation as we go through some more of these topics. Can you hear me, Pat?
Yep, I can.
Okay. Joining us is Pat Smith. She has an in-home child care in Adel. She is also my mom and has a lot of experience hiring in-home sitters because she hired them for all of us our entire childhood. She did not have the luxury of having older kids to babysit the younger siblings, and so we had nighttime sitters, some good, some not so good. And so we're going to talk about some things that we need to have in place so that the experience is always a positive one. So we have been talking about different classes to have your sitter go through. We've also been talking about things to have around the house. What do you recommend, Mom, for people hiring a sitter for nights and weekends for the very first time?
One of the things I highly recommend is that they do a lot of checking into their background and not just take it on one person's recommendations, because we made that mistake once and had a very bad experience. We had a sitter who we totally trusted and we'd had a really good experience with, and when we got to get her that night, her mother said she wasn't available, so she sent another sibling, and it was totally disastrous. So I think you need to really know the person that you're hiring. I think that you need to make sure that they understand your philosophy on your children and what you expect of them. I think you need to make sure that they understand where emergency things are. They need to always have a contact number for you. They need to know what they're allowed to do as far as eating or that. I highly recommend that they never be allowed to have friends over. They're there for on a job, and you don't take your friends to work with you. And basically just a lot of safety checks to make sure that your children are getting what they need, because they are your most prized possession.
Yeah. So we were just about to talk about rules for babysitters. So I'm going to go down my list, and then you're going to tell me if there's any that you think I've missed. You ready?
Yep.
We talked about attire, and I talked about how I expect people who come to my home to babysit to not be showing my children their belly button ring or their thong underwear. We have not yet covered the rest of the rules, but here goes. Rule number 2, no friends. I find that when two adults are in a room, that each one of them feels that the other one is watching the child, and then neither of them are. So I tell people who come to my house to watch children that I'm not okay with them bringing other people along to do it. It's too easy to get caught up in conversation. It's too easy to get distracted. In the meantime, my child could be getting into anything. So I don't allow boyfriends. I don't allow girlfriends. I don't allow friends, period. The next one on my list is no internet. I do not feel it's appropriate for someone who comes into my home to watch my child to be on my computer. I feel like their Facebook needs to wait. Their Twitter account needs to wait. Their email to and from friends need to wait. And what I find is that a lot of times if you hire a teenage babysitter, they have restrictions on their computer at home, or there's things that they don't want their parents to see, and they generally end up looking at those at your house. So what I do recommend is that you password protect your computer and make sure that they understand that your computer is for your personal and business use, that it is not a toy, and that it's not okay for them to be on it. If you're going to allow your children to use the computer, I don't recommend that you allow them to use the internet while there's a babysitter in the home, because that person may not supervise their internet interactions as well as you do. And so I feel like if your children are going to be on the internet, you should be present to supervise what's going on the internet. And if you have a child who's old enough to know the password to your computer, then I recommend that you check the history each and every time you have a babysitter to see who's looking at what. Yes? You agree?
I totally agree, but there is one safety thing that you can put in place. You can go on your computer at any time and put in an administrative password that says no one can get on there except you. And if you're going out for the evening, that's very easy to do, and then neither your children nor the babysitter has access to your computer.
Yeah, and I don't know that my 11 and 13-year-old aren't smart enough to figure out a way around it. But either way, it just needs to be made clear to the babysitter that internet is not an option while she's watching your children. The next rule, no leaving. Some parents allow babysitters to take their children places. The only time I ever allow a sitter to take my children anywhere is if it is an adult sitter. I do not allow teenagers to drive my children around town while babysitting. So if you are going to hire an adult sitter, 20s, 30s, 40s, then if you choose to allow them to go places with your children, that's absolutely fine, provided that they take with them all of the emergency contact numbers, not just for you, but for your backup family members and your neighbors. And in addition, they need to take a first aid kit, and they also need to take emergency supplies. So if your child is under the age of 2, then you need to make sure that if your sitter is going to go somewhere with your child, that they have a packed baby bag so that if they get stranded, they can feed your child and change their diaper. These are things that young people who don't have children don't think about. They may feel like it might be fun to take your child to Sonic to meet up with all their friends. First of all, this is a bad idea. And second of all, they might not think about taking a bottle with them or diapers or wipes. And so my rule is no leaving. And if you're going to leave, then I need to okay it ahead of time, and we need to have a plan, and you need to have all of the things in your car that you would need if there were an emergency. That about cover that one?
Well, my philosophy is I just would not allow them to take the children anywhere, because even if you have an older person who takes them, those people don't always think like you think, and they may take your children places that you find totally inappropriate. And you never know what's going to happen with someone else when they're out like that. So if I want someone to come in and take care of my children in my home, that's where I want them to be.
Yeah.
I don't want them out running around with my children at all.
Yes. And I will tell you a very hard lesson I learned about this one. When I was doing in-home in Urbandale, I had a staff assistant who worked for me. And she was taking my child to school every day. And she was a good kid, reliable worker, very honest and very nice. But unbeknownst to me, she did not have car insurance. And so when I found out she didn't have car insurance, I offered to cover her with car insurance under my family's plan. She declined and told me that she had found car insurance and that she would get car insurance for herself and that there was no problem. And I did not double check to make sure because I had no reason not to trust her. A few weeks later, she was backing out of my driveway in the afternoon to go home and backed smack dab into the middle of my husband's car, the side of his car, and then came in bawling and confessed that she had never gotten car insurance. So my mistake was not making sure when I found out the first time that she followed through and got it. And I paid for it because we paid for the repairs to my husband's car out of our pocket, which was not a cheap repair. So if you are going to allow anyone to drive anywhere with your children, you need to check their driving record. You also need to see a copy of their license and a copy of their insurance and registration, because you do not want your child standing by the side of the road as the babysitter's car is being impounded for expired tags or registration. So make sure before you let your child in a vehicle that the person driving that vehicle has a valid license, current insurance, and registration, and you need to check that they have their driver's license on them each and every time they leave the house with your child.
As far as the insurance goes, just show them the little card of proof of insurance to me isn't sufficient, because they can have those and have had their insurance canceled. So if I was going to do that, I would be making a call to their insurance company to make sure it was valid.
Good point. Very good point. Because I have seen people hand officers even proof of insurance that they knew had been canceled, and yet still they hand it to the officer.
Yeah.
And lucky for them, the officer didn't check. Because otherwise they'd have been in big trouble. All right. So next one after no leaving, no one enters. It is not appropriate for your babysitter to let anyone into your home. You need to make that clear, especially if you are a divorced parent. If you are a divorced parent and you do not want your ex-husband or ex-wife coming into your home, the babysitter needs to know. Because when your children open the door and yell, "Dad," the babysitter has to know that Dad is not supposed to be in the house.
Yep.
And your children shouldn't be answering the door while you're not at home. And you need to have that talk with your children, not just the babysitter. And you need to put a latch at the top of the door in addition to the regular lock at the bottom of the door so that your children can't open the door without an adult. And that helps the babysitter to keep your house secure. Okay, so we've talked about evacuation plans. We've talked about going over with your babysitter the way out on every floor, and that making sure that you have a ladder if you're going to allow her to watch the kids upstairs, and that you have an egress window if you're going to allow her to watch the kids downstairs. Let's talk about things you need to teach your babysitter about. Now, we talked about letting the babysitter know about your child's schedule. When we talk about schedule, that includes things like when do they eat, when do they sleep, how much TV are they allowed to watch, and when. What am I missing here with schedules?
Well, any medication, any allergies, schedule-wise, I would write out the children's schedule and leave it posted. This is when I want my children to do this. This is when I want my children to eat. This is when I want my children to go to bed. One thing I would be very, very strict on is bathing children and leaving them at any time unattended. And
I personally do not have my babysitters bathing my kids. I believe that the risk of a child being hurt or killed during bath time is huge. They can stand up and slip and fall in the tub. They can drown in the tub. The phone rings. The babysitter gets distracted. Absolutely, I do not leave the responsibility for bathing my children ever up to a teenage babysitter. There is absolutely no reason that you cannot manage your child's bath before you go out or pick a different night of the week. But this is one of those high-risk behaviors that I absolutely don't allow. The other thing that I advocate that you absolutely make sure about is if your child is an infant under 12 months of age, you need to teach your sitter about the back to sleep. So you need to make sure that your babysitter is putting your baby in their crib, on their back, with no blanket, because the risk of suffocation and SIDS is huge. And you do not want to come home to find that the unthinkable has happened while you're out to dinner. And so if you're going to have a teenager watching your infant, they need to be instructed on how to put your child to bed safely and all of the things that are high risk. For example, we just recently had a child die in childcare in Iowa because the childcare provider put the baby down on a regular adult bed. The baby rolled over and suffocated. And this was just very recently. And this was an adult childcare provider. Now, if an adult can make this mistake, an adult who does childcare for a living, then imagine how easy it would be for a teenage child. So you have to show your teenage sitter, this is how we put the baby to bed, on their back, with their pacifier, with no blanket. Make sure that there are no pillows in the crib. There's nothing the child could suffocate on. Make sure that they're never laying a baby on a couch or an adult bed or even on a big fluffy blanket on the floor unless they're sitting right there with them. Things that you might not even think about going wrong can go wrong. And so you have to talk about emergencies and how they could happen. I'm going to put you on hold for just a little bit, Pat, because we have to take a commercial break.
Okay.
And then we'll be back in just a few. And we are going to take a couple minutes to look at our sponsors, and we'll be back in just a couple.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
Get away from us, you needle credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios. Listen, watch, chat. This is Webcast 1 Live. Programs on webcast1live.com are brought to you in part by KDC Builders. Building custom homes for how you live. KDC will take your dreams and turn them into reality. Go to our website, kdcbuilt.com, or call Hannah Inman at 515-975-9990. And Tom Coates and ConsumerCreditOfAmerica.com. Are you overwhelmed with mounted credit card debt and feel there's no way out? Well, there is. Call 1-800-955-5765 for Consumer Credit of America. That's ccofamerica.com.
Welcome back again. So we're talking tonight about hiring a nighttime or weekend sitter for your family. And because this show is geared towards parents of children age 0 to 6, we are pretty much specifically talking about babysitters for children age 0 to 6. Finding a sitter for a 13-year-old is a whole nother ball game, and we'll get into that in a later show. So we've talked a lot about emergency plans, things you need to have in place before you even bring a sitter into your home. We have talked about interviewing sitters. We are now going to talk about the things that need to be covered besides schedule with your children. And we are going to have Pat rejoin us. If I can get the mouse to get over here and get on top of the little button. Okay, it's not wanting to do it. Oh, got it. Can you hear me, Pat?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep. Okay, so we're talking with Pat Smith. She has Granny Time Childcare in Adel, Iowa. And we are talking about things that need to be discussed with a nighttime and weekend sitter. We talked about the schedule, and we talked about writing the schedule down. And then you touched on medical. So now we're going to talk a little bit about medical. Go ahead and tell us what you would want included as a babysitter as far as medical information on a child.
I would want them to have first aid and CPR certification, and that is not at all hard to get nowadays. If they're going to do any babysitting at all, I think it's their responsibility to have it.
Yep, and we talked about they can get it at the local fire department for $35. Most of the local fire departments do it, and it is a valuable skill to have no matter what. It's a skill that your child will be able to use. Hopefully they'll never have to, but if they ever have to, it is a skill that you'll want them to have.
I also think, and this is from a personal experience, since I lost my own parents in fire when I was just a teenager, that a fire escape plan is absolutely an essential part of their training, and they need to know how and where to get their children out safely should a fire occur.
Yes, I agree. And we talked about having an emergency plan for each and every floor and going over it with the sitter and showing them where the power main is to shut off the power if they need to because of an electrical problem. We talked about making sure that there's a first aid kit in your home that is well stocked, not a few Band-Aids and a tube of Neosporin, but gauze and triangle bandages and things that can be used in case your child tries to climb a tree and falls or falls off of the swing set. Things that your babysitter can use in an emergency to help your child until help arrives. We talked about emergency numbers by the phones and showing your sitter where they are. The next on the list with medical,
I guess in Iowa you also should include a tornado shelter plan.
Yes.
I personally, for my daycare, have a shelter set up in my basement, and in it I have water, I have temporary food supplies, I have diapers, I have wipes, and I have some toys for the children. And the children know that, so it's not frightening for them to go down there. But I also take the weather radio and my cell phone. So I think the babysitters need some training for this kind of incident. I mean, hopefully a parent would not stay out should the weather get really severe, but in case they should have to, the babysitter needs to know how to handle the situation.
Exactly. So you have a 72-hour kit, as we refer to them.
Basically, yes.
Yes, we love 72-hour kits. We're going to do a show all about 72-hour kits in 2 weeks, and you are going to want to watch that show because we've got some experts coming in who can show us how to make 72-hour kits in big coffee cans, and it's just amazing to see what kind of emergency supplies you can fit into a couple coffee cans in case anything goes wrong. So now we're going to talk about medical. If you have a child with any kind of medical disability, and Pat well knows this because she was a nanny for children with special needs and had some children who had some pretty severe medical disabilities that had to be attended to. If you have a child with a medical or developmental disability, it is crucial that you get your sitter training in that disability. If you have a child with autism, you should never, ever put a sitter in the position of watching your child without learning anything about autism. The same with spina bifida, cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Even if your child simply has asthma or an allergy, you need to prepare your sitter for anything that could come out of that medical disability. You need to train them how to use an EpiPen. You need to teach them how to use a nebulizer. You need to talk with them about the signs and symptoms of your child's illness. And you need to try and find a local training or support group that can help to educate your sitter. The goal here is to hire a long-term sitter that you can use more than once, who knows your child, who has a relationship. If you only think as far as who can I hire this weekend, you're not benefiting your child. So you have to start thinking about, for those times when I'm going to want to go out, who would I want to use? And you need to secure a relationship with that babysitter.
I don't know a lot about Iowa, but I know that in Arizona when I was there, that was one of the things that I did. And I was trained by the state of Arizona in special needs training so that I knew how to handle these situations. And so I'm assuming that probably in Iowa there is the same system in place somewhere where people could actually find babysitters who have special needs training.
Iowa does not per se have those kind of resources, at least not that I have been exposed to. And if any of you know about them, you need to let me know. There are websites that have sitters who have been background checked, who are in Iowa, that you can use. There are also child care providers you can use. But if you're hiring a teenage night sitter, the things that Iowa does have is they have YMCA babysitting classes. They also have some babysitting classes that are done through adult continuing ed in the different parks and recs. And it is good to find kids who have taken those classes or to pay for them to take the classes. I will tell you that an investment in a good babysitter is something you'll never regret. If you end up paying for their CPR and first aid class, so what? It's $35. To know that they know how to save your child if your child chokes or stops breathing is more than worth $35. Prepare Iowa has free classes for universal precautions and for mandatory child abuse reporting. It doesn't cost you a dime, other than you may want to pay your babysitter for the time it takes her to take the class, and you may want to have her take it at your house. Because it's done online on the internet, you can sit with her, go through the class with her, discuss the topics with her. If you're going to be using her to watch your kids, you also want to build a relationship with her. The next item needs to be addressed is over-the-counter medications. If you're going to leave your child with someone, I cannot stress enough that it is the parent's responsibility whenever possible to administer any and all medications. So, if your child is on an antibiotic, Make sure that the dose is in either before the sitter comes or after you pick up. You do not want them to accidentally give your child the wrong dosage. You do not want them to accidentally give your child the wrong medication. We are talking about very young people here. And so the risk of mistake is high. And because medicines like Tylenol and ibuprofen have such a small, minuscule difference between the right dose and an overdose, you should not have a teenage babysitter administering these medications at all. Now, if your child develops a high fever while you are gone and you want the sitter to give a dose, then that's appropriate. However, you need to be very specific with the babysitter. You need to have it clearly marked on the bottle or on the box exactly what dosage your child takes, or you need to leave it in the instructions that are on the fridge in case of an emergency. Make sure that you're not relying on them to read the bottle and guess how much your child weighs. Because like I said, especially in an infant suspension, the difference between the right dosage and an overdose is just a couple of drops, and you don't want your child's liver compromised. That about cover the medication thing?
I think so. Some medications, I believe, if you are forced to have your babysitter give them, you can put out the dosage ahead of time so they don't have to even make the decision.
Oh, yes. Pre-drawn syringes. I leave those for my husband, not the babysitter. I draw up the antibiotics in a syringe and lay them out for the hubby because, let's face it, it can be confusing. It really can. Even to a grown adult, it can be confusing, and it's hard to remember exactly what time you gave it last and when they're due to have it again. It's just good to take the guesswork out of it for a babysitter.
Absolutely.
All right. So next thing that we want to talk about with babysitters, you need to talk to them about dietary restrictions. If your child is allergic to eggs, they have to know. If your child doesn't like Kool-Aid, they have to know. If you don't allow your child to have soda, they have to know. So make sure you sit down and write out what you want your child to eat and what they're not allowed to eat. And you also need to talk to the sitter about what they're allowed to have. If you are going to have someone in your home from 6 to 10 p.m., chances are good they're going to get hungry or thirsty. You don't want to come home and be angry that they've gotten into something that you had set aside. And you don't want to come home and find that they have not eaten or drank all night and that they now have low blood sugar and are cranky with your child. So I suggest that you keep some food on hand for your babysitter. Ask them ahead of time what they'd like and stock a little bit of it up. But make clear to them what it's okay for them to have and what it's not okay for them to have. And my other advice to you is that if you are in a home with children and you're having babysitters who come in, your alcohol in the home needs to be kept under lock and key. It needs to be locked away. Not that your sitter probably isn't trustworthy. However, I just feel that if there's going to be teenage children in the home, that the alcohol needs to be put up because you don't know, and there's always a risk.
I don't even think that applies just to teenagers. If you have an elderly person babysitting, you still don't know what their habits are or what their faults are, and alcohol should not be available at any time.
Well, I would agree. And if you have kids in the home, your alcohol should be up anyway. I mean, it really,
true.
Even if it's just your own children, if that babysitter turns their back and your child thinks that the drink that's on the counter looks exciting, they can't read the label. They may not know. It's just better that it's kept up.
Yep.
Obviously, before you hire a sitter, I would hope that you're all responsible enough to childproof your home. Make sure that there are no poisons under your kitchen sink, that there are no knives in a drawer low down where a child could reach them, that there are no medicines on your nightstand or on your dresser. Because if your babysitter's on the phone talking to you and your child is in your bedroom eating your medicine, there's not much that can be done after that except a trip to the emergency room. And I will tell you a lesson I learned the very hard way a couple of years ago. I got up in the middle of the night to give my youngest daughter, who at the time was 1.5, a dose of Benadryl. She has cat-induced asthma. She had gotten exposed to a cat, and she had been having trouble breathing. And so we had given her Benadryl. I got up at 11:30 at night. I was exhausted. I gave our youngest daughter Benadryl, and where normally I would put it back in the upper cabinet in our kitchen above the fridge, Because I was so tired, I closed the Benadryl, which had a childproof cap, and put it on our dresser and climbed into bed and went back to sleep, thinking that the next morning I would put it in the cabinet under above the fridge. Now, I normally, when I was working, left for work at about 4:30 in the morning. So I got up, got busy with my work day, and later on in the day, I was at home and I was in the kitchen, and my daughter, who is now 5, who was 3 at the time, was especially quiet. And for a few minutes, I let her get away with it. And then I realized, I haven't heard anything. So I went to the bedroom to check. She was in her bedroom. She had gotten the Benadryl off of the dresser. And of course, most medicines now are, bubble gum and cherry flavored. And so she thought that it would be yummy because she remembered it was yummy when she was sick. And so she managed to get the childproof cap off at the age of 3 and proceeded to have a Benadryl party with her little stuffed animals and was pouring the Benadryl into the little measuring cup and feeding it to the stuffed animals. When I found her, I had only been away from her for a few minutes, but I did not know if she'd had any of the Benadryl. And so immediately, I, of course, had to take her to the emergency room. And we ended up in the emergency room for several hours while they put in IVs and gave her activated charcoal. And it was an afternoon that I will never, ever forget as long as I live. And all because I was exhausted and didn't take the time to take the bottle back to the kitchen and put it above the fridge. Now, if my daughter can do that with me in the home, 2 rooms away, making dinner, then she can do it in the home with a babysitter in another room, answering the phone to talk to me, or preparing her supper, or getting her pajamas for bed. And so all of your home needs to be child-proof before you leave a sitter alone with your kids. Put the stuff up, because if you don't, then you're partially responsible if something goes wrong. So make sure you go through your home and put the medicines up, put the knives up, put anything that could potentially be dangerous to your child up before you leave.
There is one babysitter distraction that we haven't covered, and I'm not even really sure how to control this, and that is texting. Teenagers nowadays live on texting, and you can't take her cell phone away because you want her to be able to reach you, but you also don't want her sitting there texting and not paying attention to what your children's doing. So I don't know quite what the answer to that is other than telling them they can't, but that doesn't stop them.
If you are having an extreme problem with texting, there are a couple of solutions. Obviously, you need to talk with any sitter that you hire before they ever start about cell phone usage. What are they going to be using it for while they're at your home? Now, you've got a couple of choices. You can absolutely hand them a different cell phone and tell them your cell phone needs to stay home or go with me, and give them another cell phone to use in case of an emergency. The other part of the equation is that you can monitor a little bit how they text when you're there, because after a few minutes, they tend to forget. And so that's what I talk about when I talk about doing a dry run where they're with your kids and you're outside gardening or you're with the neighbor or you're whatever. That gives you a chance to see what they do while still being able to supervise. And if all they're doing is texting, don't hire them. If all they're doing is texting every time you see them, don't hire them. I mean, it just has to be to where you have to watch and see what their habits are before you decide if they're appropriate to watch your kids. All right, so we don't have a whole lot more time, so we're going to talk about just a couple more things before we wrap up with the hiring a nighttime and weekend babysitter. Now, if you're going to have somebody watch your kids, obviously you will want to let them know what your child can and cannot watch on TV, because otherwise your child might trick them into letting them watch South Park, because a lot of teenagers don't have the filter that says this is appropriate or this is not. And so the temptation is going to be, ooh, I really like this show. He says his mom and dad let him watch it. Okay, don't tell your mom and dad, but we're going to go ahead and watch it. Be very, very clear about what television your child is allowed to watch and what they're not. And if you need to put parental blocks on the cable for the nights you have a babysitter, feel free. Discovery Channel's got some great stuff. National Geographic Channel, Iowa Public Television, great stuff. If you need to block out all the channels that could potentially be used to watch horror slasher flicks with your 5-year-old, then do it. You're the parent. It's your home. Don't be afraid to tell the babysitter, these things are not allowed. This is my home. You also want to make sure that you have art supplies. At my house, we have a 4-season porch that's called the art room, and all we have is just crap for the children to play with. Stickers, googly eyes, paper, glue, markers, crayons. It is amazing what you can buy at the Dollar Tree. Amazing. And you can buy craft projects at Michael's for like $1, and they can paint a beautiful little music box. They can paint a little suitcase. They can make a picture frame. Spend a couple bucks. Stock up on some art supplies to give them something to do that's educational, that's creative. You can also buy age-appropriate games. You can buy projects. You can buy books. And you can teach your sitter how to educate your child. You can design a curriculum and tell them, tonight we're working on the letter A. Here's 5 different projects with the letter A. And make your sitter a part of the education process. It'll be fun for your sitter. It'll be fun for your kids. And it will help you to make sure that they're getting a well-rounded education. All right. Well, as usual, before we even got through everything, we've run out of time. It's been great seeing you guys. I'm going to put you back on hold, Pat, because we're going to go, and then in a few minutes we'll be back for the next show. Tonight on the school age years, we are going to talk about training your child to be a babysitter. So we're going to transfer right into that topic in just a few minutes. Have a great night if you won't be coming back. Otherwise, we'll see you in a few. Bye-bye.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking